So today we are going to be talking about stone identification. I have a bunch of stones today in this box that my dad bought for me a long time ago when he was in Bahrain, I think. It's a very tight-fitting box. So today we're going to be talking about different blue stones. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to tell them all apart. And so I thought it would help to make a video with some of them here. A lot of blue stones are formed using copper compounds, but they're formed in different ways, and that's what differentiates them. Different. So the first stone that I want to talk about today this is sodalite, and the white veins in it are formed from calcite. It was a little difficult for me to understand from what I read online how sodalite is formed, but it is a tectosilicate, so it does have silicates in it, but it's formed inside silica-poor rocks, and there can't be any quartz present because then the stone formed would be a feldspar instead. And the name sodalite is based around the sodium content of the stone. And sodalite is a stone that is often mistaken for lapis lazuli. And so I do also have some specimens of lapis lazuli here. And the main thing that will differentiate lapis from sodalite, because they're actually formed in very similar ways, but I don't know if you can see on these stones where they contain pyrite. It's little flecks that look like gold. Yeah, there's like a vein over here, if you can see that. Yeah. And of course it's this beautiful dark blue color, and polished up it usually looks a little more like this. And it forms near igneous intrusions, where limestone or marble has been altered by contact metamorphism or hydrothermal metamorphism, and the lazurite actually replaces portions of the host rock and preferentially develops within bands or layers. So sometimes when you see lapis lazuli, also it'll have a more banded appearance, whereas sodalite has a more veiny appearance. And then another rock that I have that looks very similar to both of those, or very similar to the lapis. It's a slightly paler blue, but it is called dumortierite, and it's named after the guy who studied it the most. He was French. And it occurs in high temperature, aluminum rich metamorphic rocks. Again, resulting from contact metamorphism. So very similar to how lapis lazuli is formed. It has fibrous or columnar crystals, and sometimes the most prized forms of dumortierite are actually inclusions inside quartz crystal. And that's what it looks like. You can see this color is more of a periwinkle blue, whereas the lapis is much darker. The next stone we're going to talk about is azurite. If you can see that and see where the little pieces of malachite are in it. So azurite is a secondary mineral. When carbon dioxide laden waters soak into the earth and they react with copper ore under the earth's surface, azurite is formed. And it is an intermediate stage before malachite is formed. So that's why there's little bits of malachite in it, is that if you then let it go further, it will form into malachite. That's just the chain sound. And then this next stone is also something that can be found with malachite inclusions, and it is called chrysocolla. And it's a hydrated copper phyllosilicate. Some people have hypothesized that it could be a mixture of copper hydroxide spurtinite and chalcedony. Or a mixture of copper hydroxide, spurtinite, amorphous silica, and water. And it's also a decomposition product of copper minerals, similar to azurite and also similar to turquoise. And as you can see, it would be very easy to mistake this for turquoise, but they're not the same thing. And if water is exposed to this stone, it's not necessarily degrading to the stone, but it will make the water toxic because copper compounds will leach into it. And this particular stone, you can see, has a bunch of malachite inclusions. So the next stone we'll talk about then, which I have been using, in my readings, is turquoise. It's okay. So these are from Arizona, and this one you can see has little pieces of pyrite in it. I think you can see that. So turquoise is formed by a chemical reaction where water containing copper and aluminum leaks through a rock and forms veins, which then turns into turquoise. And the thing about turquoise is that it's very prized, and so there's a lot of cases where you will get people dyeing other stones to look like turquoise. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, chrysocolla also looks very much like turquoise, but it's not quite as highly prized. But one thing you can tell with turquoise is that all the little veiny areas are going to be recessed, and they're not the same surface. They're very, turquoise is very porous, and it can be very pitted. And the veins, if you run your fingernail over, you can feel where the vein is. One stone that is commonly dyed is called howlite, and howlite is a white stone. If you want to test and see if your turquoise is real or if it is dyed howlite, you can take a Q-tip with a little bit of acetone, and you can rub it on the surface, and if the Q-tip pulls away some of that dye, that's one of the ways that you can tell if it's dyed howlite or if it is real turquoise. Sometimes if you get caught out in the rain and you're wearing dyed howlite too, the dye will leak out onto your skin. Turquoise is a very sacred stone, and so a lot of people take it really personally when people dye howlite and try to pass it off as turquoise. And I'll let you do more research about that on your own. But it has to do with the traditional use of turquoise in Native American jewelry. So I recommend reading more about that, but I'm not going to touch on it too much here other than what I've already said. Don't take my word for it. Another Another stone that I'm not even entirely sure what kind of stone these are, but they were supposed to be turquoise. And they're actually pretty cute. They have nice banding and good color variation, but I'm pretty sure they're dyed, and I think that they're probably granite. I still wear them occasionally, but I kind of wish they hadn't been dyed even. Like, I would have rather worn them as just granite. But people probably won't buy them unless they pass them off as turquoise. And I don't even have any howlite. I thought about putting a picture, but you'll know when you see it, most likely. And then the next stone that I have and I have a bunch of little chunks like this. This is kyanite, and kyanite is found mostly in metamorphic rock. It's formed from the high pressure alteration of clay minerals during metamorphism of sedimentary rock. So instead of igneous rock, which a lot of these have been metamorphosized from. And it's found in the schists and gneisses of regionally metamorphosed areas, and sometimes in quartzite or eclogite. And one thing that's cool about it is you can see that it's got a grain to it, kind of like how selenite has a grain. And it's called anisotropic, which means that in one direction it's harder than in the other direction. And sometimes kyanite can even be found cut into cabochons or faceted gemstones, which is really interesting to me, especially considering how it can be very difficult to work with because it's got that grain. And so I wonder how it doesn't just like crumble to pieces when they're trying to shape it. And the next stone that we'll talk about today is blue calcite. And calcite is formed from calcium solutions. They even sometimes grind it up to make antacids and bone density supplements. Large crystals form in hydrothermal veins, but more commonly, calcite is formed by sedimentation. And the blue color of blue calcite is thought to come from natural exposure to ionizing radiation. I did see one source online where somebody was asking if it was possible that the blue color was caused by strontium, and it looks like that's not true. And I couldn't get a very good source on the natural exposure to ionizing radiation either, but that seemed like the most plausible. And calcite actually comes in a wide variety of colors, not just blue. I also have some fluorescent calcite, but I'm not using it in the video today. We're only talking about blue rocks. But I did pull out my orange calcite plugs. But a lot of calcites do fluoresce, and in fact, very first thing in this video when we were talking about sodalite, often the calcite veins in sodalite will fluoresce. Unfortunately, none of the stones that I'm using for this video are fluorescent. But maybe someday I'll have enough fluorescent stones to do a whole video about them. And then the next stone that we're going to talk about, which actually looks kind of similar to dumortierite and looks kind of similar to tanzanite. It's not either one of those, but I think you can probably tell that it's a corundum. This is blue sapphire, and the larger pieces tend not to have the best clarity. So the ones that are used for tiny little pieces of jewelry are typically the ones with the best clarity, so that when they cut them, you can see right through. And the mineral is also known as aluminum oxide corundum. So the color comes from what compounds are present when it's being formed, because the other form of corundum is the ruby, and then sometimes there's clear and sometimes greenish or brown. Sapphires are typically found in recrystallized limestone and metamorphic rocks that have less silica and more aluminum. So transition metals are what cause it to have this color. This side is really pretty, actually. It's like really shiny. And then the last blue, true blue stone that we're going to be talking about today is, well, it's not even really a true stone. It's blue goldstone, and I don't know if the little flecks are going to show up well, but the way that they make goldstone, it's a type of glass, and they heat molten glass to a temperature hot enough to dissolve granules of copper oxide, and after it's completely dissolved, it's allowed to cool slowly, and that gives the copper ions adequate time to find one another and grow into little copper crystals, and that is what gives blue goldstone that sparkly appearance. And then the blue color in blue goldstone, because the usual color is like a reddish brown from the copper, but blue goldstone also has cobalt in it, giving it the blue color. fits pretty well on that finger. And then I also have another stone that is blue, but this is a piece of quartz, and as you can see, it's got like little veins of blue all through it, which is done with electrophoresis. So they put the quartz crystal in a vat of blue dye, and then they zap it with electricity, and the blue goes all in the little cracks. And I just thought it was really pretty and I wanted it. But there you go. That answers your question. What if it's blue? I also have little Amazonite plugs in. I like Amazonite a lot, and often it'll have smoky quartz inclusions. So pretty. But I didn't include that in this video today because it's pretty easy to tell when you have a piece of Amazonite. And the rest of these I felt like were kind of very similar to each other. And I thought I would just take some time to explain the very subtle differences. So let me know if it made sense in the comments below, or if there's anything else you'd still like to know, or if you feel like I didn't get anything quite right, and you wanted to elucidate and clear things up. I always appreciate it. I like making these videos to learn. That's really my goal with this channel, is the learning, my learning, and then hopefully being able to share it with others. One last thing I'd like to say on this video is that for my 500 subscriber mark, which is coming up, I'm not entirely sure when, but a little bit soon, I want to do a tarot or crystal scrying giveaway of a personalized video for one lucky person. So if that's something that interests you, put your email address down in the comments below. And I will choose one person, and then it'll be your choice whether you want a tarot reading or a crystal scrying. And that will be open until I hit 500 subscribers. So the next few videos that I make, I'm going to put something in the comments, or, you know, something in the video itself. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this helped when you're at the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show and you're wondering what that blue stone is. Please do like, share, subscribe, comment. And I'll see you again soon.